To get further information, please refer to the ECP installation guide, specifically Chapter 7.2 Installation of Endpoint on Windows. For installation of Endpoint on Windows Server, it's necessary to have prepared the ECP Endpoint jar file. After double-click, the user interface for installation is opened. It's necessary to set up the installation type and the targeted installation path, which should be empty. If the targeted directory doesn't exist, it will be created. It's possible to register application as a Windows service, which will make the start of the application more simple and also to allow automated start of the service after the server startup. Default passwords can be used, but for the security reasons it's recommended to set custom ones, which can be plain, hashed or encrypted. There are several passwords which need to be set, at first for administrator and then for other technical accounts. All the defined passwords will be stored to appropriate configuration files. Now the installation is finished and the start of the application can be performed. The application is registered as a Windows service under the name ECP Endpoint. Therefore, it can be started directly from service. Now it's possible to open the graphical user interface via web browser. The URL contains of the HTTPS, your server IP, 8443 port and ECP module at the end. The login is not necessary. The loading process can take a few seconds. After that, it's possible to proceed with the registration process. At first, it's necessary to import the valid certificate file, which is provided as well as the password by the administrator of the component directory. Then, it's needed to fill out URL and components code of the component directory and to check the connectivity. When the connectivity is successful, all mandatory information about the endpoint has to be filled out. There is a field for endpoint code, following by company information such as organization, contact person, email and phone. The GDPR disclaimer need to be checked and then it's possible to submit the request for registration. The endpoint will reload its configuration. After that, the registration request approval by component directory administrator is needed. When the request is approved, Endpoint will reload its configuration again and become fully operable. As we can see, the installation and registration have been successful and it's possible to display the main dashboard with valid certificates. In the Messages tab, inbox and outbox pages are displayed correctly. In the Components tab, we can see two successfully registered components, which are the component directory and this endpoint. In the settings, there are obviously filled out company information, paths, messages types, certificates and other useful settings, including the button for re-registration of endpoint. The endpoint is prepared.